Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome to the July 21st Downtown Design Review Committee. We will begin with roll call. Paula?
Betsy Brunstetter, Gigi Faulkner,
Present.
Charles Ainsworth, Corey Bates, Nathaniel Harding, Connie Scothorn, and Danielle Terrio.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we go any further, please take this opportunity to check your cell phone if you've not turned it off already. Appreciate that. And has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes of our June meeting? Yes. And do I have a motion to approve? Second. Okay. I have a Nathaniel Danielle motion to approve. All in favor? Aye. Aye. The motion passes. The minutes are approved. We do have one case that is withdrawn, which is 809 Southwest 7th Street. And so that was continued at the June meeting, but now it has been withdrawn, I notice. We have one continuance request, which is 1126 North Chartel. It's one that we have continued before. Are there any comments from anyone here, the applicant or from staff, about that? Anything we need to? No. Move for continuance
we're asking for it to be continued to August, and if we've advised them that if they don't actually go to August, we'll withdraw it.
Okay.
Because it's been 6 to 8 months.
It's been 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
I noticed that. Okay, so do we have a motion?
Madam Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Sir.
So this predates my tenure, so I don't have background knowledge. Is it just because they haven't been ready to make a presentation?
Yeah, they got the original project was approved, but the streetscape, they were waiting on some decisions from Traffic Commission, and then the committee had some comments and wanted to see it back, but they have not been able to bring it back.
Okay. So we'll move on to the consent docket.
We need a motion.
Oh, we did motion. Pardon me. Do we have a motion on the continuance?
Move to continue? Can I just get away with that?
Second?
Second.
Okay. We have a Connie Nathaniel motion. All in favor? Aye. Okay, the motion is passed. So now we're going to move on to our consent docket. Anyone can request an individual consideration of a consent item, but I do believe Lisa is going to be our staff point person on this and tell us about this item.
Yes, this is in Campbell Park. Last year, the committee approved the Orly Ganger lobster rope sculpture, the dark orange that was in the park. And the Oklahoma Contemporary intends to do a series of those types of sculptures. This is for what's called Cloud City. It's a very large glass, steel, geometric shapes thing that people will actually be able to go into. It'll be right in the middle of the park, and we saw no issues with it, and that's why we put it on consent docket.
Okay. Do we have any comments from the gallery about this art installation, or any comments from the committee? Okay. I need a motion to approve the consent docket.
I move approval of the consent docket.
Okay. Second. We have a Nathaniel Danielle motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Motion is approved. We are going to move on now to our first case, number A, which is 1220 North Hudson Avenue. Is the applicant present?
Yes, they're here.
Okay. Will the applicant come forward, please? If you'll come to the podium and sign in.
I'm already signed in.
Okay, good. Thank you. And then introduce yourself and tell us about your project.
Okay, my name is Richard Starks. I'm with Prairie Rock Architecture, and we're the architect. And two of the owners are present. And a little bit about the owners. Deb Dale and Joe both have restaurant experience. They're soon to open Hopscotch on North May, and Joe operates Paseo Grill, which is, I think, a successful restaurant. The project will be to renovate the building in front of you and add an outdoor park. The outdoor park will consist of eating area, an area for games, and we want to emphasize that it's going to operate more as a park than, a food truck venue. The food trucks are just to kind of supplement the menu and give some variety, and we feel that that variety was going to make it more attractive to people that walk in, like the local residents, and the rotating menu will help that out, I think, tremendously, rather than just having like a static restaurant that only has, one set type of food. The plan that you can see, the northwest corner is the existing restaurant, and we are adding to the right of that a food container that will have the restrooms for the restaurant. Farther to the right of that, that is a larger container that has a men's and women's restroom. South of that will be a refrigerated container, and a container that serves as like we're calling it bar, but it's to serve drinks out of. The rest of the open area to the left of the bar, that's going to be sidewalks with turf, fire pits, and seating for anyone who wishes to eat outside. Farther to the south of that, the two dashed diagonal, that is for the food trucks to park. To the right of that is a dumpster enclosure, which is completely fenced in and operates from the alley. The site itself will be completely fenced in, either with fencing or using the containers, the sidewall of the container to block. And can you go back to the pictures of the building?
Sure.
The first ones?
Hang on just a second. No, it's okay. I need to go back to this and then.
Okay, so on these pictures, what we're going to do is kind of keep the same theme of the building. We just want to renovate it and make it look a lot nicer. There's some code issues with it. It's plate glass window, uninsulated, so we need to replace those windows. We want to keep them on the slant. The fascia that goes around the outside is really deteriorated, and there's a lot of mechanical equipment on the roof that we no longer need. So we're going to get rid of the mechanical equipment, put a new roof, a new fascia, which is in the plans. On the south side of the building, which is what you're looking at right now, there's that, I don't know, we call it like a carport. That's going to go away and get redone, and the fascia will match the rest of the building. And that'll kind of act as the entry to the whole site. So you would come in from the west side. It's labeled, it's the top right picture. You would come in there, there would be a decorative gate done by a local artist. You would come in there, and you'd either go in and to the right to enter the park area, or you'd go into the left to enter the restaurant, bar area. And so we are moving that front entrance that you see in the top left picture, but we feel like combining the entrance, it does help with the business model of the restaurant as far as a number of people that have to operate it. And it also increases our seating inside because it's a small space. And I think having one entrance will kind of let everybody know whether the park part is open or closed, and it makes it really visually identifiable that, hey, this is open for business. And it also, when that gate's open, people can still see in, and it'll generate some curiosity so that, it'll attract people into the area. We did a initial parking count because we're not required to have parking. Within a 1-block radius, we have 29 on-street parking spots that aren't marked or reserved for anyone else. There's a paid lot to the south, and it's $5 parking, and we estimated that could hold approximately 30 vehicles. Within a 2-block radius, we have an additional 79 on-street spots, and there's a gravel lot 2 blocks to the south that has approximately 90 spots. that's unpaid parking and not marked specifically for any other tenants. The food trucks, one of them, initial plan, one of them would be set as a barbecue food truck, and that would be operated, by the owners. And then the other food truck would be a rotational food truck. So that was where you get the variety in that menu. Are there any questions?
I have several questions. Looking at the site plan, can you tell me the number of shipping containers total?
Okay, so total we have one that will be undercover, and it's a 20-foot container, and it's attached to the existing restaurant. And then we have, to the right of that, to the east, we have one 53-foot container. And then south of that, there's two 20-footers that are joined together.
Okay.
And they will all have matching fascia, so it'll tie them in to the existing building that we're renovating. And
Yeah, hang on a minute. Let me,
show you the elevator.
I was just thinking that.
I was just curious about that. And do you have any other comments? Do you have any other presentation that you want to make regarding this? And then we'll move on to staff, and then we'll have committee comments. And
there was one more. This morning, there was some discussion with the neighbor to the north about, we're trying to be a good neighbor with everyone, and obviously they have a private parking lot. And so there were talks about how to use their parking lot in their off hours. So we're kind of in discussions with them about doing a parking agreement with them to get additional parking. But nothing's, finalized yet.
okay. Laura, do you have?
Good morning. Let me go back to this one and make it bigger. Just to kind of walk you through, I was trying to do that while he was talking. One of the things that I wanted to point out is there's a proposed addition that's referenced in the staff report, which is in this location. Currently, the building kind of has a notch out of that corner, and they're proposing to square it off. When he referenced this bathroom shipping container that was going to be attached, it's actually going to be attached to the roof. The roof is going to be extending out over, and this will be the structure that the roof will be on, so it's considered an addition to the existing building. And I just wanted to point that out since he had just been talking about that. In the staff report, there were several issues that we discussed, and I'll just kind of highlight those, and if I don't go into enough detail, if you have questions, just please interrupt me. The one issue that we discussed that he referenced was the fact that they're proposing to remove the existing front door, which is on Hudson, and replace it with the angled windows so that it will look like, and I'll get to that picture, so it will just look like a continuous, this is the existing front door on Hudson, and they're proposing to change that so it has the angled glass all the way across it, which creates more light on the inside. That was an issue because, as referenced not only with the downtown information, but also the DDF. And the downtown development framework refers to keeping the main door on the street. As he referenced in his discussion, what they're proposing to do is they're actually proposing just to the south of that is what we're referring to as the carport area. And they're proposing to have a gate, which is not part of the proposal yet, that will be coming back later, designed by a local artist to create their grand entrance, have a door that goes into the building here on the left, and then the access to the outdoor area would be on the right. One of the issues that they're dealing with is that the current door into the building does not meet ADA. And so if they had to put the ramp there, it would really take away from the front of the building, and so they're proposing to put that ramp offset over here, and then just have the whole front of that look the same. We talk about the fact that while it's not they're moving the front entrance, and on the surface, you might not think that meets what the DDF talks about. They're actually creating more of a grand entrance that could actually handle more traffic, and it would be the entrance to the whole site, not only to the building, but to the outdoor area, especially with the proposed gate, that future gate that's proposed, create a very dramatic entrance to the site. The building materials, every time we have containers, you see us have to discuss the building materials because we don't actually specifically address containers. The applicant has indicated that they're proposing to add material and kind of upgrade the exterior of the containers, add the fascia, which is the same fascia that they're going to have on this building, to tie them all in, as well as, with the exception of the bathroom container that is immediately to the east of the existing building, which is set back from the street. The containers are not the prominent structure on the street, so it wouldn't necessarily detract from the site itself. There have been several projects approved recently and in the last few years that involving shipping containers, and we reference those in the report. One might argue that shipping containers could be looked at as being utilized for temporary uses. However, if you look at what's involved with converting the shipping containers and meeting the building code, it's a significant investment. So, and their proposal is to dress those up so that they actually kind of match the building. It's basically a case-by-case scenario that we've discussed each time they've come up, and I figure you're probably going to have some questions about that. But this is a very large site, and they're spread out on the site. I know you asked that question about how many containers were actually on that site, so we can go to that site plan here in a minute. On the landscaping and was the next one in site improvements. One of the things we also referenced in the staff report deals with, we don't have any criteria right now to address food trucks. And so we've had, once again, we've had several projects in the last year or so for food trucks, so we kind of have to look at each one. They're actually siting them down off the alley, so they're not on the prominent corner of this site. Originally, they came in with one, and they listened to a lot of our suggestions and added a second one to add more variety on ability to the site. And we go into the seating and some comparisons in here, as well as referencing some other outdoor seating areas and food truck courts that if you want to go into those specifics, we can. However, one of the issues that we see is that this proposal is close to some existing residential properties. We have Catty Corner, we have an apartment development that used to be the Sieber Hotel. It's also on your agenda today for HL designation. We have to the east, we have multifamily development. There's a vacant lot next door that is not developed yet, but we've been getting some phone calls on it as well for residential development. The one positive could be that we're trying to create interest in the downtown area and have places for people to walk and not have to get in their car and drive. And so this is definitely a variety. It's not something that's next door. There are those who might not agree with adding this type of use here, but in looking at, is there a place that you can walk in that area right now to get something to eat or to gather with your friends or to just hang out, which is kind of how these are viewed. And it is definitely a prominent site. It's been vacant for a long time. This would add a use where you could potentially see a lot of people gathering, and definitely more of a positive than having it vacant. I actually was stopped when I was out taking pictures, which was kind of interesting because somebody asked me what's going on over there with that abandoned building. I said, well, somebody wants to do something with it. And they're like, that's great. I'm like, okay. But didn't ask any specifics. So that's, it's, as staff, the last thing is the staff report, recommends approval of this. We do have a lot of issues that we brought out for discussion. So if you wanted to ask me or add additional information from the applicant on some of these.
I think I'd like to ask right now if there's anyone in the gallery that would like to comment on this project.
We've got several on the list here, and I don't know how you do that when you have people who go down.
What? We'll just go one by one. Okay. Someone would like to come up first and introduce yourself and speak to the project.
Marva Ellard, 1305 North Hudson Avenue. We're the Seaber people across catty corner to this site. We do agree that some life in the neighborhood would be helpful, but we do have some definite issues with this proposal, and I'll just go one by one if you don't mind. I think the application is incomplete. There's no detail for the gate. There's no detail for the pergola. This building is a Valentine diner. There's a lot of websites on Valentine diners. They're historic along Route 66 in this part of the country. To eliminate the front door, to me, is an issue for the appearance of the building. I can understand not using the front door, but I do think the building needs to appear to address the street. I don't know that we have issues with the south entrance and the gate, but we don't know what the gate looks like. We don't know a lot of details. The landscaping plan is very incomplete. We still have a lot of concerns about the amount of food that will be sold here. And when I say that, I know this is not your purview necessarily, but the food to alcohol ratio, and can this site support the food sales? I think there's a lot of interest in the neighborhood in a restaurant with a patio, but a patio that seats 234 people seems a little extreme. Louis' patio seats maybe 50 people, and I know we can't ask for a continuance, but I've spoken with Joe, and another member of the neighborhood has spoken with Dale, and I think that there are discussions that might need to be had with the neighbors to develop a more complete application, and one that the neighbors would like to support. I mean, we talked about, we'd go there for lunch all the time, but we just don't quite know what it is and what it looks like and what it's going to be. And we'd like the opportunity to work through those concerns.
Do we have anyone else? Please come forward.
I'm Nancy Nagel. I'm the president of Historic Preservation, and so I'm here to represent Heritage Hills neighborhood. We also are all for development of this area, and we, in our neighborhood, love walking to new restaurants and establishments that are filling in this area south of our neighborhood. We are concerned with this particular project that the outside seating is for more than 200 people. Because Wesley Village, the area has so many residential areas, Wesley Village, Palo Duro, and the Seaber across the street, Heritage Hills, 2 blocks to the north. We are mainly concerned about the noise in this type of establishment. We understand in our neighborhood that noise and traffic is going to be part of development, and it's a balance. So we are certainly, as I said, supportive of projects, but this project really concerns us about the noise level for this many people in an establishment that has late hours, serves alcohol and food, and how it will negatively impact the certainly the south side of Heritage Hills.
Thank you. Anyone else from please come forward. If you'd like to speak, please come forward to the podium and introduce yourself and sign in, please. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is John Sorensen. I'm here representing the Charter Commons, which is just to the north of the proposed site. I can appreciate the emphasis given to the parking arrangements and the availability heading to the south by Block 1 or Block 2. We're probably 50 feet to the north and have an unprotected facility, and I know that Mr. Kazis has visited with the president of the association to address potential conversations regarding that area. The past has indicated with the development of the Midtown that we have increased our maintenance costs, the leftover or abandoned vehicles from evening activities, trash in the area. And so our greatest concern is the overflow of what will obviously come from the development there and how it would negatively impact us. We're all a professional group of office buildings, and whether it starts opening for lunch and continuing through the evening hours may be less impactful, but obviously during the day when the parking lot is occupied with those who are working there, creates an inconvenience for those who are trying to do their commerce. So that's pretty much all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the gallery that would like to speak to this project? Okay, one more. Good morning.
Good morning. Jason Johnston, and I sit on the Mayor's Committee for Disability Concerns, and so that's why I'm always here. The presentation really didn't cover this, or at least I didn't hear it. I presume that the long container is going to be an accessible set of bathrooms, ADA, and that's good. I do remember, and Gigi will remember, 3 years ago when we had our first time around with containers at the Contemporary, and an issue with dealing with containers from now on, and the issue there was not being accessible on the second floor because of an elevator, et cetera, that we don't cover containers and that we don't cover food trucks seems to me to be a horrible oversight, and I know that you've just rewritten things about what this committee does and what the city plan is, but obviously containers are here and they are much more permanent than we originally thought. So it was just a comment as a citizen that somehow we need to address this situation.
Can you clarify that, Jason, from a disability standpoint? Is that your
Well, at the
purview?
time, the first instance was a perpendicular use of a container, which is quite unusual. And we had a case not long ago that we have an entire development of containers, and we were concerned at the time whether they could actually make that work. I wasn't here for that meeting, but I know that it was passed. But in that case, it was, we have a vertical shaft to get to a second floor for people who might give money, who might be in a wheelchair, who couldn't get there because there wasn't an elevator. We talked about the reality of what's temporary. And in the development of our city, we have a lot of temporary things. One of the temporary things we don't allow is gravel in parking lots because it makes them inaccessible. They have to have a solid paving or something that functions as a solid paving. So the reality there is the one is like the other but different, and we don't address it. So that's my concern, mostly as a citizen, but it also relates to ADA.
Thank you. I would like to note that we just received an email that I just saw. We received it late yesterday afternoon, so we just saw this morning. Has everyone on the committee had a chance to see an email from the president of the Harvey Lofts HOA? that's in support of the project. Does
And I'm
everybody
sorry, I
have-
failed to mention that, too.
That's okay.
And I provided a copy to the applicant.
Okay. So everybody's had a chance to read this letter, and it's from Mr. Al Winters and A.J. Winters, excuse me, and he is in support of the project. Okay. I think we're now ready for committee questions, and if you would like to address those at the podium, that would be fine. And we'll just continue. I know I have several questions, but I'm going to defer to committee members to jump in and ask questions, any questions that you might have.
I was hoping, can you actually bring up the elevations of the building and walk us through
Sure.
the proposal? Thank you.
Elevation.
Oh, okay, sorry. Those are the, trying to figure out what you want to do with these. Okay.
All right, so these are the individual buildings. There's another one that has the entire site on it. Which would you rather start with?
This is fine with me, but just, yeah.
So on detail A, which is in the top left corner, there's a space right above the word elevation. That is kind of like a breezeway, right where the little hand symbol is. That's a breezeway between the existing restaurant and the new restaurant. We did that to give a separation, so the container, so they're not joined. And you can see the fascia that wraps around. And to the right, because of the historic nature of the building, we were trying to, restore it, but bring it up to code with the insulated glazing. To elevation B, which is what you would see from Hudson, the center section where the hand is now.
Over here?
Yeah, that's where the door currently is. This is what it would look like renovated. Basically, we infill the door area with the exact same material. And to the right of that is the handicap ramp, or ADA ramp. And we wanted to make, the building has a crawl space, so we have to have a ramp to get up and make that building accessible. And to address one of the other issues, on detail E, where you see the W and the M, there's a ramp in front of that. And that is how you would get a wheelchair or anyone else up into the restroom. So the site's completely ADA accessible with the concrete paving throughout. If you look on the one that says south elevation, you'd really only, most of that you'd be able to see from the site only, and that would be where you come in on the left side and then travel to the right to come into the site, or there's the glass door just left of the hand. That would be the main entrance into the building. Detail F is what you would see on that 20-foot container. That's we're calling the bar elevation. Behind that is a 20-foot refrigerated container. And they're all detailed out exactly the same. And we're trying to pull elements from the restaurant to the containers. So it's not like we just sit a container in the middle of that existing paving and open for business. We're really going to do a lot of work to them. And then if you can go one more. These are the elevations for the entire site. The top two details were a fence that we were proposing that, once we talked with, Laura, that we decided to knock those out and shoot for details C and D.
Oops, sorry.
Okay. So this is what you would see from the street. You'd have the metal fence, which is within the design guide
Dang it.
requirements. And then we'd have evergreen shrubs that what's represented there is their pretty much full mature height, so that it still allows some partial screening, but you can still see into the site, and it generates interest of what's going on inside. The fence will also limit the travel of trash. The evergreens will help limit some of the noise. And the pergolas is what you can see in the background above the fence. They stair step as you go down. And those would be, I think everybody thinks when they think pergola of like a rough cedar, kind of a rustic. We're not doing that. It's going to be a smooth wood with like a stain and a seal on it. And I think the material is represented on the material page. That is the fascia of where she was pointing previously. If you look, that picture and the photo above, that's what the fascia would look like. It's a custom broken panel, and that's what will go around the tops of the containers. That's what will go all the way around the restaurant, what we're calling the carport area, and anything that has a fascia will basically be that. The windows below, it's an example of what the glazing would look like, and it's a powder-coated frame, so it's not just like mill-finished aluminum. And can you go up just a little bit? To the right is a copy of that dwarf Alberta spruce. They're 4-foot-tall max at maturity, and that's the shape of those evergreens that would be planted along Hudson and 12th. And then above that, we are going to recycle turf. It's not like the conventional AstroTurf. It's a longer blade, and that's what our grass areas will be. And that also has like a lower rolling resistance for ADA. So while someone in a wheelchair wouldn't be restricted to the paved sidewalks, they could, roll across that easier than regular natural turf. A couple of things that I would want to address was the count of how many people would be in the space. There's kind of a quandary as an architect where code will allow a certain amount of people in a space. So we had to figure that maximum amount so that we made sure that we had proper egress, which is on the southeast corner down by the dumpster, and the gate that we've been talking about next to the restaurant, and north onto Hudson. Those, we had to make sure we had enough exit capacity for the space. So that's why we defined that occupancy. In the staff report, there was talk about a 40 to 60 patron per hour as was needed to support it. We're shooting much more for that number during regular business hours, but we don't want to limit that. The maximum is the 234. But that's not what we're typically shooting for. That's just what code would allow that space to handle. So,
how many actual seats do you have shown on this scheme? Or guess, roughly. It looks like more than the
234 was my count when I counted 4 people per picnic table and 4 people per round thing, and all the individual. That was just, that was my count based on seats, not on egress square footage.
I believe the egress would allow much more than that, but that's, we have the 3 points and.
Yeah, the occupancy square footage is probably, not to alarm anybody, but it's probably like 500. I mean, it's, a lot of people.
And then, any other questions?
Well, I guess I just have some comments. So I guess I have to agree that the number of 200 and, I can't remember, you said 34, 43 people. Sounds like a lot of people. And I wonder if this will even draw 200 and something people to that space. So that just makes me wonder if, to address some of the comments also that we've heard today, is it necessary to provide that much seating? And could you use different parts of that site for other things? I don't know what it might be, but if it's left open or more turf that's not necessarily prescribed seating throughout.
What we were shooting for is to show the max amount seating.
Okay. So this is not a final, it's not like this is the actual furniture that's going to be put on site. This is just a
under the pergolas, that's pretty well set. And then the layout of the turf and the sidewalk, that's set. We're using some of those spaces as access for utilities, to move the utilities around the side without cutting up too much of the existing paving. The ones in the middle, those are movable, round tables with, with benches.
So the fire pit's the only permanent?
The pergola? Oh, sorry?
Besides the pergola, the fire pit's the only permanent, I guess, in the trash enclosure site feature?
Correct. And the fire pit is, they're natural gas, so they have to be, set in place. So there's not like wood burnings going on, and they're more of an accent. So it's not going to be like a big flame or anything like that.
The comment about the fencing, I guess from a staff perspective, is this about what you normally, the level of detail that you normally see when it comes to the fencing, and is there any concern over what the code would say about that?
We had a lot of discussion with the applicant when they came in because they originally wanted taller fences, but we are restricted to 4-foot high. They actually originally wanted, the one fencing that was crossed out was more of a solid wood, which isn't allowed in front. And so the decorative metal, which is what they're proposing, 4-foot tall, is in keeping with what is allowed, both in the regulations and the guidelines. And then the solid fencing that is on the east side and in the alley area is also allowed for side and rear yards. So what they're showing is what's allowed in both our guidelines and our regulations.
The fence guideline or regulations are actually pretty tight. It says, here are your choices, here is your spacing, here is your height.
Yeah, the pickets are all spaced, the heights, dictated, everything is to what the design guide would require.
And the one that you actually are showing, it's the same one as what's across the street?
Yeah,
Is it-
it's very...
The one at the parking lot across the street?
Yeah, let me get to that.
It's,
Oh, it's kind of a dark picture, but let me...
while she's bringing that up,
We're talking directly to the west across Hudson is a parking lot that has a decorative metal fence around it, which is exactly what they're proposing. It also has the covered areas, which they've indicated to us, which is where they got the idea for what they're calling their pergola area over the seating, because they were trying to mirror what was across the street of that, which also has that appearance because of it's kind of a change in grade on there. So they are immediately across the street, and that's what they were showing kind of over those seating areas closest to Hudson. Right. And if I misspoke, please interrupt me.
no,
Okay.
that's where we got kind of the, design concept for it. And, try to keep in harmony with what's around.
So I didn't see the detail of the pergola. And
Oh.
is that our detail?
They're really...
It's on that sheet where I had crossed off the landscaping. This is where that's where they got that idea, was from across the street.
And if you're looking at detail D from the left to the right, it slopes higher from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, and that's where that pergola steps down. So it kind of stair steps down. And they're not ornate, they're not, it's not a rough cedar, it's a post and beam, and they're really, we didn't want to dress that up too much and take the focus away from, the existing building.
So is it painted or is it natural wood?
It'll be natural wood. It'll be stained and sealed. And originally that was going to match our fence in the top, but we decided not to submit that one after discussions. So
Yeah, I must say, I've been confused about these plans. I didn't realize that it was concrete. So the whole site is going to be concrete?
It currently is.
it currently
Oh,
is.
it is currently.
Yes.
It's a parking lot.
It's currently a parking lot, so let me go back to the pictures. And some of them are kind of dark. The weather didn't cooperate that day, but the building right now it's right on the corner, and then all the rest of the whole is a parking lot all the way to the alley, all the way over to the east property line. The whole thing is paved.
So we're only removing, concrete in the areas where we need to for utilities, landscaping to put down foundations for the containers and the pergolas, and we're trying to reuse as much of that existing paving as possible.
Well, since I already have my mic turned on, the landscape plan will need to be redone with a plant that grows in Oklahoma.
I didn't hear you.
The Alberta spruce, we would want something that would grow here
That would grow
in
well.
those conditions. So,
There's a planner. So along 11th and Hudson, you can see where the spruces are, right along that. That's actually a planter. So it's not like we're just cutting a small circle and, letting that tree sit there and bake. We've got a whole planter that's cut in right there. And then the fence is just behind it, then the pergola, and then you go into the site. And we would mulch that planter there's a mulch that we submitted in there. I think it was black cypress mulch. And then the trees would be growing in that.
but those trees won't be growing because they don't grow here in those conditions. So I would recommend you pick another tree.
Okay.
Back on the pergola, because even I, as staff, I was like, what are you guys talking about? It's not labeled on the site plan. It's not labeled in the scope of work. So I would suggest that this pergola thing is not actually to be considered here. It will have to come back. Because I'm not sure that anybody here understands what it's made of and what it looks like and how high it is.
I will speak to that as well. There's not any detail at all on the pergola.
It says install pergolas.
Right.
That's a little vague.
And that what we would require as a committee would be a detail of that and a specification of actually the product that you're going to use. So I think we would like to see that. But I do want to go back and just address some. We've had some comments from the public that I would like to address so that we can vet those today. And one does have to do with the noise that has been talked about by 3 different people. And my questions are about that are related to the design. So going to the food trucks, are they running on their own generators or is there supplied electric there?
They'll have their own service. So there's supplied electric and water.
There's supply electric. Okay, thank you.
And it'll be a small pedestal, so they wouldn't be running on a generator.
Okay. Well, that's something we need to know. So, because we're familiar with food truck courts, and there's a difference there. So that takes care of one thing. And the design of the building itself, it's about a 700 square foot building to which you're adding a little small portion. Is that meant to be just a kitchen area? How's that going to flow? Are customers actually going to be coming in there? Are they going to order food from inside, or is that just a food production area?
That is just food production area. So if you look at that plan that's there on about halfway from north to south on that building, to the left of that would be the seating area. And then to the right would be the kitchen, serving counter, and the area that we're at in the back would be kitchen space. So it wouldn't be open to customers at all. So the part you're talking about, it would be like a staff-only area.
The building itself?
The addition that you were talking about.
The addition. So there will be seating inside the building?
Yes.
For customers? How many would you say inside the building?
49 is the most that we can get with one exit. So that would be the max.
Okay. And can you tell me again where the turf is going to be?
Okay.
It was just hard for me. This was small, and it was just, even on my screen when I enlarged it, it was hard for me to see it.
Okay. So if you, the areas with the round tables, can you zoom in just a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. So any of those areas with the round tables, the rectangles that are around those tables, that would be a turf area.
So you're going to cut into the concrete and place this turf?
In parts.
Or in parts?
Some of it was going to be installed on top of the existing paving so that we didn't have to remove it.
Okay. And how does that work for ADA compliance?
So we provide other seating that is on a hard paved surface. The turf itself doesn't meet ADA because the fibers would be too tall, but it's better and more accessible than natural grade and turf. So, but we do provide seating that, is accessible.
And that is the picnic tables? Where is that?
Right. Yeah, and those benches are removable. So it's not like a fixed bench and a fixed table. So that could be, the
They're
bench
just
could be
furniture.
removed. Correct.
Okay.
And none of the furniture is fixed to the site. So it makes it easier to clean around and those kind of things.
We don't have any detail on the signage on the big sign that is on top of the building?
What was indicated to us is they're just going to be changing the face. Let me get back to the, I have a picture of the signs. So the signs itself, I think, where did I have that detail of the sign right there? The sign itself, what they're looking at doing is changing the face where the words are. And they have not given us that information yet, but the shape of the sign will remain
Remain the same.
as it is now.
It essentially doesn't matter what the letters say, because the size, and the sign is existing.
It's,
so-
yes.
So you're not changing it?
Correct. We want to leave that like it is, just change lettering.
Okay. And then my final three questions are the window and door materials.
Okay.
Are the door, we see that they're going to be powder coated. Are you going to use the existing windows and put in
So the existing
glass, or are they replacement windows? What kind of windows are they?
Correct. It'll be like your typical storefront, but instead of just being aluminum, it'll be powder coated to match the building. And the current glazing doesn't meet code because it's not tempered and it's not insulated. So we have a code requirement to upgrade that, and that's what is on the materials sheet. We called out a model number.
Oh, you did? I apologize.
And you reference it in your scope of work as well.
Okay.
Correct.
Let me get that
But
materials.
typically think of it as a powder-coated storefront with insulated glazing. And we're not going to tint. I mean, it's going to be clear so people can see what's going on inside.
Right. This lower thing on that is where it refers to the frames of the windows.
Right. Is there a plan for lighting? I didn't see, so much of this is an exterior place, and I assume it's going to be open in the evening. So is there a plan for lighting, and what is that design going to look like?
Okay, some of the lighting would be off of the buildings, the containers that we're bringing in. And then we had talked about, but haven't completely decided on, stringing lights across from building to building. And I've actually got,
The lighting was not provided, and that is not part of what we've included in here for you to review. So if they want to add lighting, it will have to come back as
It'll have to come back.
different
And-
item, yes.
we could submit that with the sign, because we were planning on submitting a sign detail. We just don't have logos, and that's not all designed out yet.
Like when they submit the gate, too.
Right, the gate.
The gate
Yes.
does. The sign doesn't need to be resubmitted, but the
Okay.
the
But-
gate would.
That was our plan, is to submit those things.
I think finally, my comment, I think overall, and I'd like to hear from my fellow committee members, is we've looked at a lot of container developments. We've looked at them very carefully in different areas of town. The ones that have been approved have been either stated as temporary over at the museum, the art contemporary, or they've been in areas that are designated or really have become developed as entertainment areas. This is a strong residential neighborhood. Obviously, we want to see restaurants and places for people to go so that they can walk there. And I think Ms. Eller spoke to the fact that they would love that across the street. But I do have concern about the aesthetics of containers in a residential neighborhood with residences almost completely surrounding you. They're all brick and pretty traditional. So I just have concern about the design aesthetic of doing more containers.
Okay. On the container, they have a 20-year lease, so initial estimates, they were more cost-effective to bring those in. They would already be partially finished, set on the site, and they'd be set on permanent foundations. Because the site slopes, the container has to be level.
Saw that.
There'd be piers concrete piers under it, and then the ramp to get up to it. That's why we set back the longest restroom building on the right-hand side of the site plan. It's set back and it's, covered by a fence and the planning. And the container is shorter than if we built some sort of restroom structure that, we bricked. And so the other thing we're trying to do is match the metal, pull from the metal on the existing building. And it kind of all lined up to where we think, hey, containers could work here and kind of blend with, what the existing building was. So that was kind of our thought process behind getting there.
And I think my final question is, just in considering the neighborhood compatibility, had you considered building a larger restaurant that would have indoor seating and perhaps a smaller outdoor area?
Did we consider
Had
that?
you considered that?
Initially, but there's a cost to that, and we also wanted to provide like a park atmosphere because we think that would draw in a lot of patrons to the area. And then I know there's like a larger park planned in Oklahoma City that's going to be over a mile away, and we wanted to provide a space like that. So kind of keeping that outdoor space open was a big, as a park, was a big concern.
Okay. Does anyone from the committee have any further comments?
One of my questions was, so the issue about the entrance, I can see the point that was made about that on both sides, but your comment, I think I remember hearing, was essentially that you're making a grand entrance that's going to serve both the building and the overall space, right? I mean, I can see it illustrated here. But I guess the drawing that I see of it, it just doesn't look very grand. It's not very ornamental. It's not very pretty. It's not very large. It looks kind of like a side, almost like a service entrance. And so that might be something else to consider: is how can you really make that into the grand entrance, concept? And
So-
then I have one more comment, but it's unrelated. So you go first, and then.
Okay, so there's kind of a catch-22 there. If you make the entrance too grand, then it's going to take away from the existing building. And so we thought that with that, the gate being an ornamental piece, it would kind of wayfinding, it would let you know where you're going, because you would see that gate, and it would be open. So everything else is fenced or building, and then there's an opening, or a gate. And I think people walking by would quickly realize we're not designing it so much for car traffic as pedestrian traffic. So when you're walking by, that's a wider entrance, and you can see into the space. And when it's closed, it would be an ornamental gate, and it would kind of signify the entrance. But we didn't want to go up in elevation or anything like that because we felt it would take away from the existing building.
I'm trying to think of so an obvious analogy is Blue Garden, and so that entrance is, I recall it being very wide. I mean, it seems like it's 20 feet wide or something. And it's, not saying that you should copy somebody else, but that's what I think of as a layperson when I hear somebody say it's kind of a focal point to draw in pedestrian traffic. But not that I'm going to have the answer for how you should do it, but just trying to think of other ways to look at it. The other comment, though, is I can also understand the noise concern, but one way to maybe look at that, I don't know how hard this is, but is to look at the noise from Blue Garden, because it's actually similar capacity, it looks like. So I don't know if there's a way to, measure the decibels, like stand across the streets during peak hours and measure the decibels to really kind of have a reality check as far as what that looks like in practice.
So I think a lot more noise is going to come from 13th Street to the north, because there's it's arterial, it's 4 lanes, and then anything that that was generated on site, it's going to be like restaurant noise, so they're not high decibel noises coming out of there. And then if there was any like special events or anything like that that would go over certain decibels, you have to get a special permit, so they have to apply. If they were going to do anything that was louder there, they would have to get apply for a special permit.
So you're going to have music?
Not without a special permit, because you can't have anything amplified. So,
What are the hours?
um,
I'm Joe Youngman.
Hello.
On the hours of operations, we'll be open Monday through Thursday from 4 to 12, Friday, Saturday from 11 to 12, Sunday from 11 to 9. And, we looked at this, and I've had an opportunity to speak with a couple of the people here. Marva and I spoke. And we looked at this venue in the very beginning as trying to go, hey, what can we do here to be great? And we realize from the aspect of when I say be great, in thinking, hey, we can make this like a Blue Garden or something like this. Once we looked at the area, we were excited to get the lease. It's an incredible place. We think we can do something really good that will help the city out with putting a little park walk area there. And, we changed thoughts early on before we started designing this to go, hey, let's get some nice seating, some greenery in there for people to come through and have a good time. Barbecue came on a little bit later, actually after my conversation with Marva, because we were having a hard time figuring out what food we wanted to do. And all of a sudden we started researching places in Austin, researching places that have similar things to this that we thought, my gosh, this is great in their city and we think it could be great in our city. So I smile, I go, I got to find a barbecue guy now because I'm not a great barbecue person, but I'll find somebody and we'll have a good time with it, and we think we can do something really positive in that area. We talked about parking a little bit. For me, I look at the walkability in that area with all the housing that's going up, and it excites me to see that we can be a destination location where people can walk to. And the word park started coming out because Dale got to travel quite a bit, and he got to see what New York was all about. We found a place called Shake Shack, which is now really big, but he got to go to that and experience how that sort of felt and looked. And not that we can bring, Madison, the garden here, but we can create our own little place. And so that was the theory about what we wanted to do. And it's changed from the time that we started to go, let's get more into the city. First, let's do a bar-type scenario, and I go, I'm not into that. I look at life and I go, I've been in this business 32 years. I've owned a couple restaurants. I failed a couple restaurants, succeeded with a couple restaurants, went into partnerships. And all these things that I add together going, you know what, I was going to have this open until 2 o'clock. That was our first talk. After that, we said, I don't want to deal with 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, bad things happen. So let's cut it off at 12. We think we have an opportunity to do very well up till 12 o'clock. And you know what? If Monday through Thursday in the winter hours, we'll change the winter hours if it doesn't work for that, but we will have that small building that seats 49 people that we can still possibly keep that open. The park may be closed, but we'll have that open. I have food service coming out from the back. Makes me a little nervous of my menu may shrink from a pretty good-sized menu in the summertime to a very, very small menu in the wintertime, just because I don't think I'll have the capability to get the revenue and to afford to put my staff, and put a big staff in there. And so we're looking at it from a lot of different angles. I also wanted to add, I also have Sauced on Paseo, which is right next to Paseo Grill. And Sauced is a wonderful little place, but we do play live music. And for years I've had a very entertaining, hard time getting my management staff to keep the noise level down. And we have a wonderful tenant that lives next door, which when I say wonderful, it was a little challenging. But we've come to an agreement. We built a little area in the Paseo, so I have a removable wall that goes up if I ever have music. And I haven't had a complaint now in quite some time. And of course, we communicate. And I'll walk down there and I'll listen. Decibels are a freaky thing, how the police are supposed to check it and say your decibels are exceeding a certain number, but they don't. They don't carry decibel carriers. So any complaint, a broken glass, they can call the police out. And so I look at this going, we will be very proactive on making sure that this doesn't get crazy like that. We talked about noise permits. I'm allowed 3 a year on noise permits. That's it. So I can have 3 events. On those 3 events, after that, I don't get any. And so if there's a concern of how we have these events or when we have them, and if we even have them, it could be a fun time. It's typically on a weekend. So that's sort of the run of what this has morphed into. And the more we talked about it, the more excited I got about it to do a great little barbecue place out there.
Great, thank you.
Any questions?
Any other questions?
Nope, I have a couple of comments. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of things. The architecture specifically, to me, it actually doesn't, I think it's fine. I think, the existing building, I'm happy to see that you're maintaining the roof line. I think that's pretty much the whole character of the building is kind of lying there. And tucking in that other shipping container underneath that roof, it's actually, I believe it's screened behind a fence. So you actually wouldn't see it, and from what it looks like, you actually don't see any of the shipping containers at least from street level. And in this case, I feel like the shipping containers, the functions that they're putting in them actually make sense. We've seen others that were trying to fit retail and things into shipping containers, which to me seems a little more challenging. But to put some of the back of house functions into them seems logical. So from that perspective, I don't have an issue with the shipping containers on this project, and I like that you're preserving the building. I think I agree with Nathaniel on that entry piece. Not that you need to change the architecture, but it is a tight entry to serve that massive yard. So I might look at that, what you could do there. The two things I think that are more concerning, or that I would like to have more investigation in, is the pergola, like we talked about, and lastly is the size of the yard. I think if you're getting 60 people, that sounds manageable to me, and it sounds like the noise issue may be a lot less of an issue. But if you're getting up to 200 plus, it sounds like a whole different animal. So maybe the yard could be developed, or at least an option looked at, is it viable to have a smaller yard dedicated for seating? And maybe that might help address some of the noise concerns we've heard as well. So I think that's all I have.
I would like to see more detail, and I think Lisa has also mentioned this from a staff perspective. I would like to see more detail on some of the things that we've talked about, the pergola in particular, and exactly the treatment of the containers, and I think that's what we've done on the other projects that have involved containers. I would really appreciate that. I don't know if you all would consider a continuance to come back and bring us more detail on that. I'm asking.
I mean, that sounds like we should do that. So I'm going to say, yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Any other comments from the committee? Are we ready for a motion?
Can I just ask for some clarification as far as the treatment of the containers? Because they had a verbal description, and then in the rendering showed how they were going to add the wood to it, as well as put the fascia to match the building. And they had the colors. What additional information were you wanting on the treatment of the containers? Just so that I make sure I get what you were wanting.
Just specific. I'd have to go back and read through this, and I think we're losing our time now. So the pergola is the main thing that I think we want to see more detail, and maybe perhaps lighting. Maybe you would be able to bring all of that back at one time so that we could discuss.
If they add anything, then we'd have to re-advertise that, because the lighting wasn't advertised like the rest of this was. But
that is correct. Well, that's correct.
And the gate. So we'll talk with them.
That could be considered separately. We do have a hand raised from the gallery. Real quickly, please. We're going to try to move on.
Ms. Faulkner, I'd ask that the applicants consider a continuance on the whole application so they could meet with other neighbors. I have talked to Joe, but I know some of our other neighbors haven't had an opportunity, and it seems like it's a very evolving concept, and we like the way the concept is going, but to me it's still in the cake mix stage and not in the baked cake stage, and it would be nice to get a little farther along with the whole thing before you all are asked to vote on it.
Thank you. So would you all be amenable to looking at a 30-day continuance?
If we continue it till next month, I need everything next week. And so
the pergola is my main
information, so I think that'll work for you, won't it?
Yeah, I don't see a problem with getting it next week.
Right.
At all. The pergola is simple. It's simple wood, and it matches matches some of the wood that's going on the container. And as far as the container, the colors and everything were called out
Well, we
With a
did see
little
that.
stamp?
I made copious notes
Okay.
on that, thank you.
I just want to make sure we get you the right thing so we can
Right.
get them, in business.
I think I would like to see that. Is there do we have a motion? Is anyone ready to make a motion?
Move to continue. I don't know, is that appropriate words? Okay.
Continue till
Meeting.
the August meeting.
Move to continue to the August 18th meeting.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you next month, thank you. Okay. Okay. Moving on to case item B, which is 501 Northwest 7th. Our applicant is standing and ready. Please give us your presentation. Thank you.
Hi, Brian Fitzsimmons, Fitzsimmons Architects, 2721 North Walker. Presentation should be pretty straightforward. I think all pertinent information is within the application. As you know, this is a project where we had a demolition earlier in the year, and we are coming forward and doing what we said we would do, build the project. It's I think, variations from the original. We were talking about 14 units. We've changed the mix a little bit to be 22 units. Coloration's changed a little bit, but all in all, it's simple. It's 3 stories, a mix of 2-story units, mix of efficiencies, mix of 2 bedrooms, 1 3-bedroom, and several. The only things that are it's skinned in a metal, architectural metal siding, and steel structure for the balconies. The backside is equivalent, so we're not treating it as a front and back. It's a full building. We have a common space courtyard, which is a nice amenity, and all the circulation is pretty much in the back in the secure area. Covered carport that goes adjacent to the courtyard, enclosed trash court, and all utilities and all that are hidden in the backside as well.
And I might point out, the only reason we couldn't put this on consent is because of the asphalt shingles, because we don't actually call that out in our guidelines and regulations as specific permitted material. Just while we have this up, the building that you approved for demolition earlier in the year was located on these 2 lots, and these 2 lots had been vacant at the time.
Right.
So, but that's really the only reason why it's here. And the streetscape is going to be approved at a later date. And the parking spaces along the street is not part of this proposal as well. They'll be working with traffic to get
And we're working
that
with
approved.
traffic right now on that. So.
Okay.
As far as the parking lot that's within the property, that provides more than a parking space per unit. The auxiliary parking along the street would be some overflow.
Extra. It would be really good. Any other comments from anyone in the gallery regarding this project? Committee members?
I like the project. I think, has it been before the committee before, this exact project, or is
It has,
No,
it
okay.
is not.
They presented a concept, you might recall, when we did the demolition, December, January, I think it was January.
January.
But it obviously didn't have the amount of detail that this does.
Okay.
But it's very similar to the concept that you all saw earlier in the year.
Yeah, I think, I like, of course, that the parking is tucked into the rear of the site, and I like the relationship of the apartments to the street, and I think there's an existing structure next to this apartment that actually is very similar.
There's actually 4 vacant 25-foot lots on the west side of this. Then there is a three-story house that's a newer structure.
Yeah,
That's
right, and I think
would be more similar
when I
to
was
this,
looking
yes.
at it, it seemed like it flowed well with what was there. The only thing I had was the perspective view where we can see the roof line, and it does look like we aren't able to see any of those asphalt shingles. Is that, actually all of these are like that, so with that 212 slope, is that, I guess accurate in terms of
It is
the screening?
accurate.
Okay.
Yeah,
And all these things, those are all mechanical on the...
correct, and they're actually hidden behind and have even a screen wall on the backside as well. So,
All right.
It's very nice. I like the project.
thank you.
We're happy to see something on that corner after this long time. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Are we ready for a motion?
I'll move that we approve the application on the basis that it meets the guidelines of the Downtown Design District, according to the staff report referenced in section C and D, or C.
Excellent. Okay. We have a Nathaniel Connie motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we are ready for case item number C, 100 North Classen Boulevard. Will the applicant please give us your presentation?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Rand Elliott. I live at 425 Northwest 15th. I'd like to start by introducing Drew Carter, who's Vice President of Young Brothers.
Hi, I'm Drew Carter. My stepfather, Dean Young, can't be here today because of a funeral, but on behalf of Young Brothers, we'd like to say we're really excited about this project. This is a family business, and we've been here for over 45 years at this location. We've done some renovating before, but with the Renaissance in the area, we're really excited to be a part of that, and we sought out Rand and Cody to help us do that. We're really excited about what they've come up with and being able to contribute to the to what's going on around us, and we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just give you a little bit of background before we get into drawings. This is a really interesting project and a very interesting location at Classen and Main Street. I'll give you a little bit of background before we get into the drawings about the inspiration for this. Young Brothers has been in the marble and tile business since 1969, so there's a reference to that. And I just want to share some fun things that I think you might enjoy about the design concept. The actual inspiration for our solution for this particular project is the Parthenon in Greece. And it was built between 447 and 432 BCE and constructed of Pentelic marble, which was white with gold veins. And the structure in itself, as we can all recall, and we're going to show you here in a moment, is absolutely the epitome of grace, strength, and permanence. It was designed by two Greek gentlemen, whose name is Iktinos, and it was built by another gentleman whose name was Callicratus. And they used this particular marble at the time. And so it seems appropriate that we would be inspired by something so important in history. What we have the opportunity to do here is to do something that is very unique to Oklahoma City, demonstrating the art of marble in downtown, which we think could be really important and inspiring. None of us can deny the impact and the positive nature of 21C coming to Oklahoma City. It's just a great addition and certainly will begin to make this particular part of downtown very special. And Dean and Drew have been very thoughtful and helpful about opportunities and ways to incorporate or create a relationship with them. And so we created 7 things that we felt like were important for both entities, if you will, in this process. One was that we wanted to create a dialogue, if you will, with 21C on the adjacent site. And when I mean a dialogue, 21C has a 24-hour-a-day art venue. There's certainly hotel rooms, and there is a restaurant. Number 2 is that visibility is very important. What's about to happen at this particular site is that there's going to be an apartment building or something proposed on the Main Street side, which will basically block Young Brothers from any visibility from Main Street whatsoever. and they're kind of blocked into this particular site, and visibility is an important part of this since they're an important concern from a business point of view. There's an opportunity for new clientele. We all know, for those of us who've been to 21C, realize that it's bringing it and attracting people from all over the country, not just locally. And so that new clientele could be introduced to Young Brothers as well. There's a downtown audience, obviously, here, and one of the things that Young Brothers is going to do, and has been doing, I should say, is doing educational programs in their facilities to show the fabrication and history of marble and granite and its use. So the idea with this is to create a completely new kind of building for Young Brothers to support and really acknowledge their history and to create, in essence, a work of art in downtown. So that's the thought. And I want to give you a little bit of background on the site, which is very unusual. You can see the red outline here, and the reason the building is at this angle has to do with the fact that there were railroad tracks in downtown. And we've found a Sanborn map from 1922 that shows the relationship of train tracks and process. And you can see the green site in the middle is the Young Brothers site, which is really a leftover piece from the railroad easement. One thing you might also note is that if you know about the City Hall, Civic Center, and that whole WPA range, that was on the railroad train yard area, and so that's why these sites are interesting in this particular area. This is the existing building in the location, and just to the right where Main Street is, there will be a 7-story building, potentially a 7-story building at this location, which is part of the challenge we have in order to keep Young Brothers having some visibility on Classen and creating a unique and memorable location. Here is the inspiration. If you've been to Greece, and the Acropolis is the location, and the building itself is called the Parthenon. This is what it looks like today, the ruins, of course, around it. But this is the Pentelic marble we're talking about that was used for the construction of this building. It's this notion about grace and strength and beauty is really important, and we're using the inspiration. We're not going to rebuild the Parthenon on Classen, but the idea is inspired by this. Here's an example of this particular marble. And then the site plan, which I've really described to you. So the gray areas are the existing building, if you will. The warehouse is on the right on the diagonal. There's really no work to be done there except a facade. The existing building is on the left, and you can see the parking position. So here's what it looks like in a colored drawing. Classen is on the left, north is up. The south edge of the site will have this built this particular apartment building or something of that nature that will basically block visibility for Young Brothers from the Main Street location. Our additions, can we, Laura, or who's driving the? Okay, Cody, can you, just point. The tan areas are a small addition on the south side. The east addition on the upper part is to give them some office space along the way. We're basically creating a specific parking area to the south of the building for customers. One thing that is going on that I should mention, Cody, can you go back, that I might mention this notion about a relationship to adjacent owners and so forth. We're actually proposing to paint a sign on the roof of this building because we've got people looking down into the yard, and we thought it would be really interesting and fun and appropriate to say something inspirational that really speaks to what Young Brothers does, as well as those people that would come to Oklahoma City to stay or to live would understand the inspiration. So it's a quote about something from Michelangelo that relates to carving a subject or a person out of a piece of marble. Here it is in its physical relationship. One of the things that is a part of the review was street trees, and one of the things that we have proposed here is that we're 37 feet away from the curb, which is very unusual in downtown. It's a significant distance All the other buildings along Classen in this area are literally at the property line. And so in an effort to maintain our visibility based on the 37 feet of depth, we would like to propose that our trees are actually on the north and south edges of the building versus along the front, so we can maintain some visibility with them as a retail customer. This is an aerial view from the south, if you will, looking northwest. The existing building is in the middle. The addition you can see on the bottom edge, and then we're proposing to, and the east addition up to the upper right, we're proposing to do a colonnade is really what it is, to identify their entry point into the main building. We would actually build two sidewalks, one that satisfies the city requirements and one that is parallel to that would have access into the building. So we're satisfying both of those, and that really allows us to use the 37 feet of setback. The landscaping that we're proposing is called horsetail reeds, and they would grow about 32 inches high, really lush, beautiful, tubular green elements that are green year-round. This is the west elevation along Classen. We're basically taking the existing building, rearranging windows, painting it, adding the marble accents, the colonnade, and leaving, in essence, the main entrance on the right-hand side of this. And you can see the skyrocket junipers, if you will, on the right-hand side, which gives you a sense of that same architectural concept. And then the ghosted image behind represents the potential for this new facility coming at some point. This is basically the northwest corner of Classen and First Street, if you will, and you can see the existing building turning around. There still is access on the north side into the Marble Yard area. This is the entry view, if you will, just trying to create a gateway that represents where the entrance to the building is, and doing it in a very elegant way with this inspiration of the colonnade. We really felt like we needed two opportunities to speak to finding this location, since we're losing the south access, and so we've done a simple marble block on the ground level that has YB, which is Young Brothers, that would allow someone to see that from eye level, if you will, if you're in a car, as well as identifying it on the column or on the beam above. This is walking through the colonnade from north or south to north, continuing on. You can see the horsetail reeds on the left, very lush, really beautiful material. The northwest corner, walking back towards the south. These elements are sunscreens. This is the west sun is brutal through here, and so we're doing a very simple lattice sunscreen. This is the north elevation, access here in the center to into the site, which is basically already there. This is the east addition, as we call it. It's office space. It's basically 2 stories, very small building that allows them to have additional office space. Same view. This is the parking area. One of the things that's happening here is that we're really trying to use the marble in contrast, if you will, to metal siding. This is an industrial site. The existing buildings are all metal siding, and so we're using that and offsetting it with the marble to give it a very elegant and interesting quality. This is looking west from the parking area. See the landscaping at the base of the building. Sunscreen, actually the showroom is going to be on this, in essence, this northwest or southwest corner, and so this is a sunscreen for the windows into that area. You come into the main entrance, and this is a showroom area. They're in the marble business, and so we're doing an elegant showroom that illustrates what they do. There's a receptionist here, if you will, and a table to show new products. You go into the left, which is the existing building, and it will be additional showroom space. It's the exit experience. View from the reception desk. And elevation drawings that illustrate vertical heights and materials. That's it. It's the south and north elevations. Next. That's it. So we're happy to answer any questions. It's great to have Drew here to talk about this as well. And we're very excited about this project. We think that it will be something really special on that side of downtown.
Are there any comments from anybody in the audience today? Applause. Thank you. Staff comments, please.
Yes, there are, what I wanted to point out to the committee, there would be 2 variances required. One, I don't know which of these best illustrates it. There's a tall fence proposed on the south property line between this property and the proposed residences, and it's, as proposed, it's taller than what is allowed. There's also a screen wall that shields the loading dock service area off of the side street, and it's a screen wall. It's technically a side yard fence, and so there are limits to side yard fence heights. So I like the way it's integrated all into the design, so I think it's appropriate, but it just requires a variance. Those 2 things, and then there is quite a lot of detail in the staff report about the street trees, and if the street trees detract from the street presence, that is the whole goal of the business and this project, or should it start to continue what has been done at the 21C and is proposed at the residences? I am completely on the fence. I could go either way, so I didn't get any stronger than just putting the facts out there.
Is there an actual detail of the fence? I couldn't see it.
There wasn't, just a height and description. It's a opaque metal. In the renderings, it's detailed to look exactly like one of the metal wall panels that's being used on the project.
Connie, the idea with the height and so
But yeah,
forth,
right there you can.
in particular on the side where there is potentially the housing part of it, we're just trying to be a good neighbor so that you're not looking into an industrial site, if you will, and that's the same reason why we put the sign on the roof. It just adds a really nice detail for the adjacent folks that are living there. I think they might be fascinated, frankly, with what goes on in this yard, but the idea is to be a friendly neighbor. This location here is the loading dock, if you will, and there could be a truck coming in and out or a forklift or something like that. And the idea was to do a solution that was very much a part of an extension of the building and, again, being a good neighbor, not necessarily wanting to see all the industrial activity, if you will.
And I also had a question about, your plan says cypress trees.
Sorry?
Your plan on all the trees that are along the property line, it says
Right.
cypress trees, and you said,
I think I said
Taylor
skyrocket
juniper.
junipers, but what do you think is the best species here?
well, if you had cypress, then I was going to ask you which kind of cypress you're going to use. I think the Taylor junipers would be appropriate, but you could space them a lot closer, which would probably help you with your tree count anyway. But I think that would be appropriate. I don't necessarily think that your street trees should be eliminated because of the horsetail reed, because I think, and in one part of me goes, yay, someone's using native plants, but these are swamp plants. They love water. And if you were to change those plants out to something like little blue stem, which is more appropriate for the environment that they're going to be planting, I would be even more happy. But I don't feel like they're going to succeed to the degree that your images show, and I feel like we should have street trees, at least some. Now, I'm not a big fan of the city code either, saying they have to be every so many feet, but I do think some mitigation of the sun on that west elevation would be appropriate.
I guess I would just come back and say we're 37 feet from the curb. The building is will become virtually invisible because it's boxed in. And so our notion about any kind of obstruction, if you will, along Classen makes the business disappear, and we're concerned about that, and they're in a position where they need business, and they need to be able to be found easily enough. And so we thought this was a good solution, and we're happy to have additional thoughts if you have those.
And in response to shading, I mean, for the building itself, we do have sunscreens that we're adding on the west facade, but then from a pedestrian perspective, we've got, again, the double sidewalk, and we feel that the colonnade creates kind of that type of interest that street trees are trying to achieve.
I think there are trees such as the slender silhouette sweet gum that Brian used on his last project that would be perfect. They would accent the building. They would not block the building. It's a very tall, narrow tree, just like your Taylor junipers, only taller and narrower. And it might be something you might want to consider.
Well, I guess the question that comes to my mind is this a deal breaker?
I have just a question, and this is to clarify for me. Help me understand. I like the junipers and the softening of the metal fence.
Right.
Because the metal fence obviously is an item that will require variance. On the site plan, it shows,
Let's go to the colored site plan. That might be easier to...
it shows 3, on the north side, it shows 3 junipers / cypress. And on the rendering, it shows many more. It shows probably half a dozen to a dozen.
That was, once we did the site plan, we had to fit within the site triangle, so we had to reduce the number.
Oh, okay. So we have reduced the number. So my question is then, when we get to that south side and we have a long, long expanse of that tall 12-foot, 10-inch metal panel fence,
12.6, yeah.
is there any way to do any kind of planning there? I like the junipers a lot. I like that shape. I think it's so classic.
Sorry, TT, on which position?
On that whole southwest side, this whole southwest expanse, south to southwest.
Oh, along the
northeast
property line?
Expanse along the property
So, Cody,
line.
can you...
Is there any opportunity there for any kind of planting to help soften that fence, or do you think that's necessary because the other properties are going to eventually abut
Is it the
that?
fence for them to see or for us to use? I mean, that's the question.
For the public to see from the exterior, not for you to use.
I don't think it's going to be very visible from the street, especially. I guess if you're parking right here, you might catch a glimpse of it, but it's really an industrial yard that's, the visibility is not that high at most locations.
I've looked at it. I'm just asking you to help me with that a little bit, because I really like the thought of the landscaping obscuring any of that fence wherever it can be successful.
I guess I'm
And
struggling a
softening
little
it.
bit with trying to understand how the fence would work with the trees. Are the trees on the neighbor's side?
On the neighbor's side.
Oh, on the neighbor's side, I'm
exterior.
sorry. Okay, I thought you
On the
meant the north.
exterior,
So
would that
there
work?
would not be a fence, there would only be trees?
No, I think you need the fence, if I'm understanding correctly, and to really obscure the industrial site in that.
So you're saying to pull the fence up further here and then continue the trees
Would that be
along that
possible?
position?
Would that be possible? And is that, I'm asking you to help me through that. And is that necessary, considering that really the neighboring property is most likely going to be the property along the street? The residences are going to pull really back to
I'm not sure that I'm pretty sure that the residences included a fence along that property line in their project. And I almost suggested to this team that they didn't even need a fence. But then I thought, well, I guess it depends on who gets there, who builds the fence first. And it looks to me like it will be them. But the apartment building, big chunks of it go right to the property line. And then there's a courtyard that's fenced. So I think whichever development gets built last will find that there's already a fence. Does that help answer your question?
It does help me.
And that this...
It's sort of like arriving after something's already done. I would imagine that if you were in that apartment building or something, they would be putting landscaping or ivy or something on an existing fence would be my guess. I think that's what I
Yeah,
would...
the only thing I wanted to, you were talking about possibly pulling the fence back. The issue with that is, while this project has been going on, they came in and I've approved, and there was an administrative approval that is, I don't know if it's on this one, it might be next month. There is a building that's going to be built here as part of Young Brothers, and it would not allow the fence to be pulled back because of where it's located. But it will help block, the building itself is going to help block what's going on in there. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. So there's a lot of things going on. Okay.
Okay. That helps answer my question. I just want to kind of
Sure,
clarification
I
on that.
appreciate that. It's an interesting thing because we have an industrial site that's being affected by other things going on around it. And clearly, Young Brothers wants to be a good neighbor to do the right thing here.
Oh, it's spectacular that as a retail establishment, you all want to do this, and I think it's a real signature project for that area. It's exciting to see down on Classen.
Can you remind me what materials you're using on your addition portions on that south side and then the office addition?
This is basically a synthetic stucco.
The existing is stucco, but then on the additions, it's vertical metal panels.
Right.
Okay.
So on the northeast addition and the south addition, it'll be a metal panel that'll match the opaque fence materials.
Okay.
You can kind of see
That's
it represented
the-
here. So it relates to the existing warehouses and the industrial nature of the site.
And that sunscreen that you showed that's out in front, what is that?
The which screen, I'm sorry, Daniel?
Just south of that addition, right there. That's what just pointed.
The windows for the showroom are right behind it, and this is intended to be a sunscreen so that you can still see into the showroom, but you can block as much as 50% of the late afternoon sun from being inside of it. It allows, as a retailer, if you will, you'd like for the showroom to be as open as possible. At the same time, at 3 o'clock today, it will be very hot and lots of strong light coming in, so this sunscreen helps you mitigate that.
I like the look of it, but what is it? Vertical posts that are just providing shade. That's all. That's what it is.
It's like think of it as a lattice, if you will.
Okay. And it's white? It looks like.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, I think. And then the office addition. I think it was office or admit that was going on that north side. Is that also just metal panel, or is that going to be stucco?
This is metal panel. So this, we have EFS along the west. It's actually a masonry building. EFS was added in the past. But on the north elevation, this is painted masonry, so it's actually brick and CMU both. This is our metal panel fence, and then the building addition will be metal panel also around here. So this entire portion will be metal panel.
Danielle, it's like a step up from an industrial kind of thing. We're trying to mitigate between an existing industrial site where a metal surface is acceptable. We're trying to upgrade it.
Sure. Okay. I just had one more comment, or two more comments. We have a section of 12-foot tall metal fence on the north side. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the one that's up right there. It basically is blocking the service door, if you will, into the building.
So it actually strikes a line. You transition from CMU to brick, and so it kind of strikes a line in relation to the existing building. So it's kind of trying to extend that existing building, actually give it some street presence, and then also screen.
We look at it more as an extension of the building as opposed to a fence, if you will.
And then the trees that you've shown there, I think what Gigi was saying is that's had to be cut back.
Yeah, the site. We have a site triangle. There's a curb cut here and another one just off the screen that we would have to pull back to meet those requirements.
The idea would be to put as many trees as we can in here to meet the city requirements and so forth.
Well, the 12-foot tall fence, to me, it's a tall fence. I understand it's an industrial site. I get that. But 12 feet is pretty tall. And I like what you've done on some of these other elements where you have this layer of landscape that kind of at least gives you a layering before you get to your building. And I do see you have the trees there, but even if it was some type of a lower level landscape element to help soften or at least create a buffer, since we're not going to get so many trees, I wonder.
You can see what we're proposing right here. We've got the landscaping going right up to the building.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on both sides of the sidewalk. So
Would that suffice?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking that that fence actually continued further to the east, but maybe it does not. So it just kind of, that's the end of it.
That's the
okay.
end of it.
It's got a sliding gate that would, right?
Well, right now what we're proposing is a gate on this back side to secure the area.
Okay, not at the, didn't originally you have it?
We looked at an option where there's a gate here and the fence continues along.
Right, yeah.
But I think the direction we're going right now is to keep this more open.
I think it's okay. Said it that way.
At that point, it felt more like a fence. With this, like Rand said, it feels more like an extension of the building by stopping it at this proportion.
Yeah, yeah. The colonnade, I have to say, I find it a little bizarre. I wanted to get some more info. To me, when I look at it, it seems, I totally understand the concept of bringing in the marble as a, homage to history and to what this building really represents and functions as. But when I look at them, they seem out of proportion to me, like very tall and slender, and they seem more like post and beam elements, like they are steel, but they happen to be marble. And then, the proportions just seem a little odd. They're very, very tall, and not unlike kind with what I've seen in this development in the city. So I just...
Part of that, I'd say, is it relates to the two-story. So it's really trying to bring the mass, because really in an urban area, you want more of a two-story feel, at least. The current single-story portion of the building does not feel very urban. So I think tying these together really makes it have more of a street presence by having it at that height.
Danielle, I would also say this is a modern interpretation, and so it's not intended to be, the Parthenon in terms of the proportion of those particular things. This is about a modern interpretation. It's intended to be a little lighter, if you will, and so that's why they're tall and thin, and to create an entry experience, if you will, going into this. And it's also the signature. I mean, they're in the marble business, and so this is the intent is to try to use this as a iconic statement that speaks to what they do and who they are.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess to me they look a little, I don't know. They look a little additive. I mean, the ones on what I'm looking here, which would be on that north side, they don't look integrated. They look very additive if they're sitting there. Almost, to me, they look like an afterthought on that end. And that's my opinion. But otherwise, I understand the concept. I get where it's coming from. I don't know that it fits in that well with the urban fabric. To me, the statement that Ms. Elliott made, which was, I believe you said these are really art elements, or more artistic, a piece of art, which that I can understand. They do feel more like pieces of art that are there to draw your attention. So I agree with that. So I guess it's just my opinion. I don't think it's a deal breaker, per se. It's just they're a little odd.
Do we have more comments from the committee, or are we ready for, actually, we will need two motions. We would need one for approval and recommendation, if that's what we
Well, I think
where we
building
wanna
is
go.
great. I think that we need to re-review the landscape plan.
Sorry, say again.
I said I think we need to review the landscape plan. The horsetail reeds take a lot of water, and I don't think they're going to succeed. I've seen horsetail reeds. They're wonderful. I've seen them in isolated areas that people are able to water them enough. But I don't think you can water them enough within the water restrictions that the city have. I'm sorry. I think it would be beautiful, but I don't think it's going to work. So we
Sounds like we need to revisit that, and we're happy to do so.
You can break out the approvals for the building and the site improvement.
We can hear the landscaping at a future, as we did on our first continuance. That's been continued for months. So, is anyone ready to make a motion?
Okay, I will make a motion that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant receives a variance from the maximum allowable fence height and fence material regulations, and that the landscape plan be brought back for approval at a later date.
Do I have a second? I have a Skowthorne Harding motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion passes. And now we need a recommendation.
Thank you very much.
I move that we provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustments for a variance from the maximum allowable fence height and fence material regulations.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes as well. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. We are on to our next to last project, which is 1200 North Broadway Avenue Drive. Will the applicant come up again? Do we need
Rand,
to take
are
a-
you presenting the museum?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was distracted.
Okay. We're on to...
Oklahoma Contemporary.
Yes, we're on to Oklahoma Contemporary.
Chris distracted me.
You're forgiven.
Yeah. Well, we're
That'll work. Thank you so much.
very excited to be here presenting this particular project. I'd like to introduce Jeremiah Davis to come up and say a few words about Oklahoma Contemporary.
Good morning, committee. Good morning, gallery. Thank you all for allowing us the opportunity to come before you with this proposal. We at Oklahoma Contemporary are extremely excited about our growth, both for our organization, but primarily for the city, for the state, and for the region. We know, based on extensive research, that what we're going to be able to provide in terms of learning opportunities, creativity, creative expression, exhibitions, performances, that this will really add to the cultural life of the city, as well as the economic activity of this area of town and also of the whole city. So Rand Elliott and Elliott Associates have put together a tremendous presentation. It's a great building. It continues to improve with each review process that we've done internally. We are confident that it satisfies the necessary requirements. I know there's a few variances. I think that the design fulfills our mission and also provides an excellent destination, cultural destination for the city. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rand to offer the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Just a little background again. I think there's been a lot of interest in this particular project and what's going on here. And again, I think that you might find it very interesting. I'm going to start with talking about the inspiration for the project itself. Get to my documents here. Do you have that, Cody? Chris distracted me. Just kidding. I'd like to just look back a little bit and tell you a little bit of history about how this project has come about. On June the 11th of 2015, Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center announced a capital campaign with renderings about a new arts campus in downtown. Board president and co-founder Christian Cassis said that the new campus at 11th and Broadway would allow Oklahoma Contemporary to greatly expand its mission of art for all through a wide variety of accessible arts education and arts experiences for children and adults. Unlike traditional museums, Oklahoma Contemporary does not collect art. The focus is really on the visual and performing arts education for youth, teens, and adults. Our contemporary art exhibitions enhance the mission as our students and community learn from the artists of a contemporary era. Currently located in the fairgrounds, the Oklahoma Contemporary was formed in 1989 by Christian Cassis and Marilyn Myers. The beginning of the organization, from the beginning of the organization, has been dedicated to providing accessible and free exhibitions for the general public with programs, outreach, and all sorts of things that bring youth and adults to their institution. In 2011, there was a study done by a national arts consulting firm found that Oklahoma Contemporary could have a much broader and more important impact in Oklahoma City by being downtown, located nearer the activities that are going on as a part of the renaissance of downtown. Oklahoma Contemporary will become the north gateway into downtown, which is a very important responsibility. The 4.6-acre campus will become home to a new 50,000 square foot building, a renovated 10,000 square foot building that will be a makerspace more than likely, and include a 3-block area for outdoor exhibitions, education programs, and public performances. The concept of the architecture is called folding light, and the idea with that is that it references the connection of the building to this particular place. Just as Oklahoma is known for its ever-changing weather, the architecture reflects the dramatic transformation of downtown, the boundless community spirit that we have, and celebrates our stunning Oklahoma light. We believe architecture is a reflection of the cultural values of a city, and that the new Oklahoma Contemporary building is a statement of belief and an investment in the arts. The new Oklahoma Contemporary building embodies the aspirations of our city, we believe, and that's the idea for this particular project. So happy to get into this. I just want to bring up a couple of interesting details that might be fun for you to know that are historic in reference. Broadway was originally called Dale Avenue, interestingly enough, and Broadway did not go north in its current position when the city was platted. Campbell Park is actually a result of trying to make Broadway straight going north, which is an interesting thing. This is called the Dale Addition, if you will, and it was occupied by a number of multifamily residences and apartment buildings, as well as single-family residences. On the lower left of the drawing, you see a curving street, and this was a part of the trolley car alignment that came around, and there's the florist buildings are in that particular area. It's interesting because the trolley is going to come back, and it's going to have a stop at 11th and Broadway, so it's an interesting thing how history repeats itself. This is the site itself. What's also important is to the north of that, Cody, if you could point to the Kirkpatrick building. John Kirkpatrick's first building built in 1950 is this building just north of this site. So there's a nice history of this coming together. On the upper right in the middle is the Cain's Coffee Building. Cain's Coffee Building is a well-known historic landmark. It's got the glazed tile on it. It was originally a candy company called Seifers, and it became Cain's Coffee in the 1940s. And, of course, the Lisi's presence has been a very important part of this process. This site had the Chickasaw Lumber Company on it. It had a coal and gravel yard in and around the neighborhood. It's a very rich history in terms of this particular location. So it gives you some Sanborn maps. These are really interesting. You see the Dale Avenue going north. This is 1904. And you can see the density increasing. I mean, this is really kind of the edge of downtown, if you will. This is 1922 going on. And then you see Campbell Park come in. And there's a great story we're going to share with you about Campbell Park and an interesting adventure there. But Campbell Park is really a resultant space of straightening up Broadway. This is the fun part. Someplace between, it was formed someplace between 1922 and 1930, but there was a fountain here with a fellow there that was the centerpiece of it. And so this is a newspaper accounting, and it said a nude figure topping fountain at 11th and North Broadway has been protested. The fountain includes a large fish pond, is on city property, and is a part of the North Broadway widening project. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of when this happened, someplace between 1922 and 30. Miss Bernice Brown of Bethany is inspecting the fountain, dated April 6, 1930. Well, it just so happens that on Tuesday was a sad day for art lovers in Oklahoma City. Kidnappers were at their dirty work Monday night, and no longer will Bosco, the boy wonder of all statues, fish from atop his fountain at Campbell Park. The statue was taken late Monday night by two men who have seen by residents near the park along Dale Avenue, accounted in May 22nd, 1930. So someone stole it, and he's never been found since then. But this is a very rich and interesting history, we think, about this particular park.
He's probably in somebody's backyard.
Yeah, he could be. These are just some reference photos that are really important to know. DeLisi's reference, there was a Coca-Cola warehouse in this particular area. Again, very rich and very much about the history of what goes on or has gone on in downtown. We've done lots of historic references here, from the Kirkpatrick Oil being there in 1950 to apartments and all sorts of facilities that ran in and around this area, but it's mostly residential. You can continue to see this. Here's the Cane's Coffee Building, well-known local industry, but Seifers Candy was actually there first and actually responsible for building it, and someone has just recently bought this, so this is going to be completely renovated, and we're really happy about that. Continued list of what's going on. Project site, of course, gives you a little broader range of what's happening in this particular area. You also know that this is Oklahoma Contemporary will become a part of the Innovation District, which is a very important piece of the puzzle. This is our proposed site plan. We're literally putting it on the corner of 11th Street and Broadway Drive being the street, if you will, adjacent to Broadway, between with Campbell Park being between it. The idea is to provide this on a corner location so that you can see through the intersection position to the building itself. It is not on the street proper. It's back from the street a significant amount. And we placed the parking along the railroad in an effort to provide as much presence on Broadway or along Broadway Drive as possible. On the north side of the site, we have an outdoor grassy area that could be for performances, kids' play areas, and that sort of thing. There's a two-story balcony that you'll see that overlooks that, so if there is a concert or an event, you could actually be on the second floor overlooking it like you're in the balcony. To the right of the entrance, which is the triangular canopy, to that position is also a space that would be potentially located for outdoor sculpture and art. We've exceeded the landscaping requirement significantly. This site does not require parking per se because it's in the downtown district. We have 162 parking spaces here to provide access because we have a black box theater inside the building. We also have access to a parking garage that's just a block away. The aerial views give you a sense of the building itself. As it was mentioned, this is an extruded aluminum skin that is really intended to be the basis for the concept called folding light, which is that it transforms or as a sort of as a dichroic element, changing as the light and the quality of the atmosphere change. The corner has a lantern, which is what we call it, which is the landmark piece of it. It represents the fact that there's energy here, there's children, there's art, there's education, all happening at this site. Next. This is the south side you're looking across, the west side you're looking across Campbell Park. This was the original artwork that was placed there, and seeing the west side of the building. The south elevation, if you will, which would be basically facing downtown. The entrance is the triangular canopy on the right. There is a small balcony on the upper area where the administrative offices are to view downtown. And the green space to the right is this potential sculpture garden area, if you will. I might also have you note that there's an enclosure at the end of that grassy area that would be where we would place the electrical transformer, all of the elements, including gas meter and so forth, that are necessary to serve the building. They would be hidden behind this enclosure. Gives you a little bit of an idea about the lantern at night or at dusk, if you will. We're on the east side, which is the main entrance. The canopy is such that you can drive a bus under it or have valet parking or whatever the case might be that would protect you as you come into the main building. North side, you see the performing space, the green grass area, if you will, available here. There's a sidewalk that connects, if you will, the two grassy areas, Campbell Park on the right, all the way through to the Sculpture Park on our site to the left, so that there's a really nice combination and connection between all of these elements. Southwest corner again. Entrance getting a little closer to seeing what it's like. Continue. Get a really good sense of the two-story element. One of the things that we've really been focused on here is to provide shade for outdoor events. One of the things that happens in Oklahoma is that it's not a very pleasant place to be in July or August when you've got really hot sun unless you can find shade. And so this is a perfect example that the building actually provides the shade for outdoor spaces. So you could actually be here for a concert and have shaded space, if you will, available to you. That gives you an idea about the second floor deck. The two large windows that are here are actually windows for the dance rehearsal space. You'd actually be able to see dancers performing inside this space, which is an unusual detail. Next. At the ground level, really important, as you know, museum buildings are not necessarily buildings that are have lots of glass in them and so forth, because you're having to protect valuable documents and that sort of thing. And so the glass at the bottom is actually classrooms for adults and children being at that particular level, and so you can actually drive by and see activity that's going on into this. We've also proposed that the landscaping for this location would be, in essence, Campbell Park on the west side, and so we have the ability to use that for our protection, if you will. It gives you an idea about the building changing its color and atmosphere based on what color the sky is. The east elevation shows the main entrance. The elements up in the upper right at the roof were basically screening mechanical units and those kinds of things that serve the floors below. South elevation, the Broadway would be on the left, right would be the entrance canopy. Again, several images that kind of give you the atmospheric quality of the building. Next. Next. At night, this would be our night light, if you will, the lantern. Next. 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 This is a view from the second floor deck looking over into the performance space of the outdoor garden play area for kids and so forth. It's protected around the perimeter so that they're not going to be running out into the street or available for others, if you will, in the particular area. So a really good vantage point to be able to watch what goes on. Ground level for that experience. Main entrance, if you will, the big window on the left actually opens to the lobby, if you will. You'll see that in just a moment. This is the cross sidewalk that goes from the parking area, sort of a promenade, and then it's wider into the main entrance. Great lighting at night in terms of the internal aspect of it. This is the view from the main entry looking west. This is you come inside. The ground level is a large lobby for all the children and adults that show up for art exhibits. It would have an ever-changing array of things going on in this particular area. There's a concierge, which is the desk towards the rear that would be available to help you know how to move through the building. On the left, and you'll see this in a moment, we have a retail and a small cafe where you could go have a cup of coffee. Because the trolley will be nearby, you could actually work at Devon, come up here on the trolley, do an event, have a cup of coffee, enjoy some educational programs, and head back downtown. Looking across at this retail space. So it's a really beautiful lobby that could be used for art and events as well. This is the retail space, so it's a combination of retail, cafe, meeting room. These rooms are available for rent, if you will, for events. This is an example of the classroom experience. Wonderful big wide ribbon window looking out into the park, but yet has some protective qualities there to be able to sort of control the west sun. But this is one of the examples of the classroom. The classroom actually has a movable partition in the middle of it, so a large classroom can become two smaller classrooms. This is just an example of the main gallery on the second floor. We're just representing an idea about its capability. We've got basically 15-foot ceilings throughout the building with LED energy-saving lighting to take care of that. And this is one example of how it might look. There are changing exhibits of all kinds that would go on in this particular space. There are small gallery spaces and large gallery spaces. One of the things that we've done at Oklahoma Contemporary for this building is that for local artists in particular, a 3,000 or 3,500 square foot gallery is really large and probably exceeds capability, and so we've done smaller spaces or the ability to use mobile walls to make a room smaller, if you will, for smaller exhibitions. We've moved to the third floor where the black box theater is. It's an interesting opportunity to do performance space or a Rotary meeting or a birthday party or any of those kinds of things that could go on the third floor. So here's the public space that leads you into that area. Gives you an idea about this. There's catering capabilities here. There's a large freight elevator to the rear. That Calder piece is actually covering the door, if you will, to the freight, or it's called a service elevator, actually. And then as you go into the black box theater, it is multi-purpose. It has the ability to be and do anything that we want it to be, whether it be a performance like these first two slides represent, or the next one, whether it be dance, or the next one, which would show you that it could be a sit-down event. This could be a Rotary meeting. This could be a luncheon. This could be any number of things. So flexibility is really important here. The dance rehearsal space, also adjacent to this, you can see the windows looking out to the north. This is Jeremiah comes from the theater side of things, and is excited about the possibility in the next image of doing small things. These could be children's performances, they could be dance, they could be any number of things for a smaller audience. Sorry, these are awfully dark in this particular space, but it just gives you an idea. Very intimate crowd. You'd see 50 in here. Next. We've included drawings that represent all the site requirements. The brown areas are parking and paving, if you will. Next. I don't know how much involvement you want in the review of the plan, but on the lower right is the lobby entrance. The classrooms are along the west side. In this area, the art storage and delivery areas are on the north side of the building. Up at the top, Cody, I'm sorry. Yeah, show that. And then the large catering kitchen is to the right. And that big box in the middle is the large freight elevator or service elevator. Okay. Basically, the next floor is these are the large gallery spaces that you just saw a moment ago. It's a combination of photo galleries, media galleries, and that sort of thing in this entire area. And there's some administrative staff over in the upper left corner, if you will. When you get to the third floor for the black box theater, it's on the lower right, and it has access from the public space out in the center, and then the rehearsal space is on the north side of the building. The fourth floor is administrative offices, which is the right-hand side of the drawing. The left-hand side is the two-story space that is the black box theater. Elevations that show vertical height. The building is 67 feet 2 inches tall. It's an 18-foot floor-to-floor height. Next. Okay. The site proofing, there's a number of ways to go about doing this. We've had great success using Coloratus on fencing, if you will, and it basically becomes a big hedge. And that's what we're proposing to do. Enclosures for the dumpsters and the enclosure around the play area. We've also done 5 different mock-ups on the exterior skin. It's a really beautiful extruded aluminum material that we're proposing, and I just included a few photos that shows you the specular quality of it. That's it. Excited and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do we have any comments from our audience today? And Lisa, I believe you're going to do our staff.
Yes, there are a couple of items that don't quite meet the development regulations. Cody or Laura, can you go to the site plan? Either of the site plans. Yeah, so the building is located in the far southwest corner of the site. And you know, there's a definitive amount of program area that they need. And to get that, by stacking it, they've achieved the minimum height that is required in downtown. But because of that, they don't have enough program area to get at or within 10 feet of the 12th Street right away, and that's a requirement. Also, because of the undulations along Broadway Place, they don't get to the technically at or within 10 feet of that street right away. Both of those concerns, I think, are related to the fact that this is such a unique use. The requirement for at or within is to create really vibrant streetscapes, lots of activity, to help bolster retail. But this is a destination use, and people aren't just going to wander over. I mean, they may if they're on Automobile Alley, but for the most part, this is a destination. People know they're going there. They're coming from far away. That's why they have to park. But it's still technically a regulation, so they would need a variance. The landscape screen walls that Rand was talking about, I think they're effective. In the code, to be able to use landscaping as screening, it's required to be deeper, like a 6-foot buffer, and I'm not sure why that is. I kind of assume it has to do with giving plants plenty of room and accounting for some redundancy in plantings. But that's a regulation, not a guideline, so it would need a variance for both the screening at the transformer pad and at the dumpster enclosure.
Cody, why don't you circle that? Just want to point out where that particular, that's the dumpster over there, but over here in the center is where the transformers and generator is.
And then they're also proposing a black coated vinyl chain link fence, again, on the property line between the parking lot and the railroad track. That's chain link is not allowed for side or rear yard fences in downtown, so that would need a variance. And again, this is against the railroad tracks, so that seems fine. Then there are a couple, so that's the regulations, a couple of guidelines. There's a guideline in the code about having a clear division between second floor and upper floor levels, and I think that's really critical on existing streetscapes where there's other architecture to match and to maintain some consistency. But this is an isolated lot. The Cain's Coffee Building does not have, is the nearest existing multi-story building, and it does not have any division. On the floor plan, Rand had pointed out the classrooms along the west side of the 4th floor. Because they are classrooms, having more than 20%, having more than the suggested 50% windows interferes with the use of the space. And again, is my feeling was that this is such an isolated site, it's such a unique use that maybe a lot of these guidelines about street interaction and vibrancy shouldn't be held as strictly. That is it. So therefore, on the staff recommendation, whoever's making motions, there are a lot of items to be covered, and that's why I bullet pointed them, which we don't usually do, but I wanted to make it very clear.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to make a note that I'm informed you before, but the rest of the committee, I want to let know that I'm abstaining from this vote and the conversation just because of a potential conflict of interest with the organization. I want to put that out there.
Okay. Noted. Mr. Harding is going to abstain from our vote, and we are maintaining quorum according to our legal experts.
Thank you.
So any other comments, Connie and Danielle? Questions?
Well, this is so exciting, and I just think it's such a great opportunity, and it's going to be a beautiful building. But I have some questions and really more curiosities. The concept and how the building form came to be, and the angles that they're at, and the apparent randomness. Are they actually random, or is the form actually derived from a study of some sort, or?
One of the things that's really important, Cody, if you'll go to the floor plan, one of the things that you find if you are around museums a lot is there can be what's called visual fatigue, and it has to do with the idea that you were to go to a museum and it's just miles of straight walls, just miles of it. And it gets very tedious to try to deal with that. And it suggests that you've got large exhibits to be able to do there. Here, go to the second floor. If you imagine the gallery space, the small sections of wall, relatively small sections of wall, allow you to do smaller galleries. And so what's nice about that is that it deals with the visual elements of it, so there's not as much visual fatigue because it's moving. Things are changing. We've also got the long north wall right there, so if we had Frank Stella come to town and he wanted to do a 40-foot wide piece of art, he could. We would have the ability to do that. So the undulations actually have a very important functional benefit, but it's also related to the concept of folding light. The notion that in Oklahoma things are changing so much, and because this has 360 degrees exposure, it will just be truly a signature about our city. It's certainly a signature for Oklahoma Contemporary, but it really is intended to be something that makes a statement about our community.
Yeah, I could see, like, with, the folds probably be important if the atmospheric quality is the whole concept. So to have different planes that would be lit, have different shading and different qualities of light on them seems like a really interesting idea to me. I wonder about the mock-ups that you brought in, or that you had shown.
Yes.
Have you done the mock-up to see, are these taken at different times of day, and are these on similar elevations? I'm just curious, since it's so reliant on the atmosphere, if we've done mock-ups to really investigate the angles.
Yes, we've done two sets of mock-ups. We did a mock-up for the entire board a year and a half ago or something in my site next to my office, and it was a selection process of choosing between glass tile and a whole series of options, and the community, or the board and the committee unanimously picked this particular idea. At the contractor's site right now, we have a 35-foot tall mock-up, and we've done 5 variations on it to try to get the very best that we can. It has to do with, Daniel, with constructability, making this efficient, if you will. It's not a paintable surface. How do you deal with the different finishes of, it's actually an aluminum finish. And so it's been done very deliberately, and 5 variations on this to make sure that we get it right, and we think we've got it right. And so we're excited about that, and I'd be happy to give you a tour if you'd like to see it.
Oh, yes, I would love to see it. So I from the concept of the building, to me, like for the function of the building, it looks like sculpture that's put on the site, and I personally feel that that's an appropriate interpretation for the function of the building. I think with the variances that we're looking at, they're all appropriate for the type of building. The undulations and things that aren't meeting setbacks on those sides, those are minor streets, relatively speaking, and don't have a lot of those retail areas surrounding. So a lot of those guidelines that Lisa was pointing to don't. To me, they're not bothersome. I can't remember any other comments. One thing I wanted to say is we only have 3 votes today on this, and I was wondering, has it happened in the past where you can continue something just so we can get a full committee here? I'd be curious to know what my other committee members have to say on this particular project. It's such a large magnitude of a project and such an important one. I wonder if having 3 votes is appropriate.
You can continue it as long as the applicant, would agree to that.
Gosh, I wish that we could go forward. I mean, we've got a deadline to break ground in September, and so we're preparing documents and so forth, and we'd love to see an approval.
There is a quorum, and per the bylaws, votes can be taken for a majority of the votes cast, not a majority of the votes of the members present.
So you would need 2 out of the 3.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
You would need 2 out of the 3 to approve.
That's correct. Well, I do really like the building. I think it's going to be beautiful. I like the concept. I personally don't feel comfortable voting on it without having input from the rest of my committee members. That's my thought. So I think For me, I'd have to move to continue, but, it's 2 out of 3.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about the project? Connie, do you have any?
No, I think it's great. I think I'd move. I mean, if it doesn't make.
Hey, no,
I do have one comment,
12%.
and before perhaps we hear a motion, and it's regarding fencing again. Have you considered, I'm looking at that long expanse of chain link fence along the east side,
Right.
and that's not, chain link is not permitted, and I do, in studying this, see that you're looking at having a sculpture park there. You're going to have 160 perhaps people enter from that for an event or just in and out, and you're going to also have, that's really the entrance for vehicular people that travel in vehicles
Let me
there.
share with you, I'm sorry.
Have you considered something else there, or tell me about that?
That this has been a very interesting, you take a project like this, and somehow the details like this are the things that people seem to focus on. Two things that we're trying to do with the fencing is to create a barrier so that children or whatever don't wander onto the railroad tracks. So that's a very important piece of the puzzle. Secondly,
Very important.
the transparency of the fence is also important so that there's no surprises or anything like that on the other side of the fence versus an opaque fence where you can't see what's going on the other side. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation because you're trying to see what's over there, if you will, to make sure that there's nothing bad going on, and at the same time create a barrier so that someone can't burst away from mom or something like that and run into the railroad area. So this is the solution that we've come up with so far that we think seems to satisfy the criteria that we envision.
And then I understood, as we looked across the east side on Broadway, facing Kimball Park, there's also going to be a fence there along that side, and I didn't see that in the description. Or maybe I missed
It's
it.
really the landscape piece. Cody, you want to point to on the north side of the building, there is the outdoor performance space, and that's where kids will play and so forth. And so it's basically a hedge. Go to the...
That's the hedge you were referring to that
Yes.
was along Broadway?
Yes.
Okay.
Broadway Drive, yes. In fact, we can go to the 3D image, and I can show you that. It's an interesting question because we studied all sorts of different kind of planting materials and determined that we need the ability to make sure that the kids don't escape, if you will. And this was a way to combine the notion, I think an aerial view, the notion of a landscape barrier, if you will, and something that would function. And so it's a combination of those two things.
I just didn't see that very well. I see the hedge
that's
now.
okay.
And I
Well, the
thought,
3D, can we go with the 3D image?
that's fine, I see it.
Okay.
I didn't see it before.
Okay.
Had you considered any, and I understand the transparency of that fence along the east side and the
Right.
railroad track, absolutely understand the transparency. Had you considered, I know it's 7 feet, had you considered perhaps a metal picket, simple
Do we
metal picket fence?
we want to say something more about
Right, and back to
That'll affect
the railroad
gallery.
part. You might recall many, many months ago, you had a presentation on the Quiet Zone project before it was determined that really, you all didn't need to take action. But as part of the Quiet Zone project, for areas that did not have a fence, a chain link fence is being put up, and we can't control what the railroad does. So if there isn't already a chain link fence in that area where they're talking, there is going to be one.
And I couldn't immediately remember, I think there's one at least on portions.
Yes,
Like
and
portions
they're
that
gonna
are-
fit-
The railroad's
yes.
putting it on their right of way, they don't.
Right. And both
Nothing we
11th
can
and 12th are closed off. You can no longer cross the tracks there. So I just wanted to point out, the chain link is, if it's not there yet, it's going to be there as part of that Quiet Zone project.
Okay, understood.
Okay.
That's fine, and black will be preferable to what's there anyway, so thank you. It's a beautiful project. And I think it's such an outstanding contribution to promoting the arts in our city. I'm terribly excited about it. So, I would entertain a motion.
I'd love to do that. So I'm the only one. I would like to move that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the downtown design zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant receives a variance from the building setback regulations, the service area utility screening color and material regulations, the dumpster screening and landscape buffer regulations, and the side and rear fence material regulations.
I will second that motion. And I will call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
The motion does pass.
Thank you
Congratulations.
very much for your time. We appreciate it, and we look
Thank
forward
you.
to having you come visit.
I also would like to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for the variance from the building setback regulations, the service area utility screening, color and material regulations, the dumpster screening and landscape buffer regulations, and the side and rear yard fence material regulations.
And I second that as well. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I guess I don't know how this vote works. If you vote no on, or that you want to change the first one, you don't vote this, and you still have to vote yes or no on this, but you can approve it. I don't really know how that works. I'll vote, I'll vote yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And for our final item, we do have, under other business, 1305 North Hudson, a consideration of possible action on an application from our city for Sieber Holdings on a historic landmark overlay. Do we have a presentation? Katie. Welcome, Katie Friddle, our historic officer of Oklahoma City.
Yes, Katie Friddle, Planning Department staff to the Historic Preservation Commission. I don't have a big presentation for you. I'll just briefly explain the city's Historic Preservation Commission has been trying to more actively initiate recognition of historic buildings throughout Oklahoma City, and we've recently initiated consideration of the Sieber Hotel as a historic landmark. So this would put the historic landmark overlay in place on this property. Property owners here, and as far as I know, is happy about it. So the base zoning would remain in place, but design review would funnel through the Historic Preservation Commission. And happy to answer any questions.
This is the same thing we initiated for the Marion a year ago.
And so what we're doing is recommending to the city and Historic Preservation.
Yes.
We're just giving a
Yes.
recommendation.
Because it's within an existing design review district, we're bringing it to this body to ask for your recommendation, and that'll go on to the HP Commission and Planning Commission.
And planning. So we're giving recommendations to two different bodies. And it was, I'll just say it was very fun reading through the history. I enjoyed it very, very much. So it's a lot of fun. Are we ready for, does anyone in the gallery want to speak to this? Are we ready for a motion?
We recommend the rezoning and designation of the Sieber Grocery and Apartment Hotel as a historic landmark to the Planning Commission and City Council.
Second.
Okay, and we have a motion and a second for the first item, and so all in favor? Aye. And any opposed? The motion passes. And then I see that there's a second item, so we're voting, and we're going to do a vote on this as well, adopt the resolution as part of the staff report. Do we need a motion for that?
No, we're just providing the recommendation.
Okay. Okay. Very good. I see. I understand. So I think that is our last item of today. I've been told by the staff that we have a
Very large agenda for next month, so I'm hoping that we will have more of the membership here. And we have the one that was continued from today that will be on there as well. So, yes, please plan to attend.
We will plan to attend. Thank you all. The staff is doing an amazing job with so many administrative items. It's just incredible. So thank you all for all you're doing. With that...
We're adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Adjourned. All right. Lost our quorum.
We are adjourned.